This is Mitchell.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Proops.
This is Dan Stone.
This is Nate Boyer.
This is Hilliard Guest.
This is Nathan
This
East.
is Rob Bell.
This is Michael Kalou.
This is J.R. Robinson.
This is Dr. Bob Greenberg.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, I'm Mark Valley.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
Hi, this is Gabby Reece from The Truth Barrel with Neil Strauss, and you're listening to The Break It Down Show.
And now, The Break It Down Show with John Leon Guerrero, Mark Valley, and Pete A. Turner.
Yeah, that's music to us. We have Gabby Reece with us today. We are lucky enough to be recording this show at Gabby's house.
Yeah.
Beautiful joint.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, thank you. Well, listen, that's what houses are for, right? For gathering.
I think so.
Yeah.
This one clearly is for gathering because this place is awesome but casual.
Yeah, it's Hotel Hamilton.
Hotel Hamilton.
Yeah.
There's a lot of traffic.
A lot of traffic. You should see it on training days, like earlier, sort of the 8 to noon window. Usually if there's people out at pool training or we have a gym below. And so we try to utilize it that way as a place to kind of gather, but also, bust your butt a little bit.
Right here over the dining room table, too, there's a picture of, 100 surfers all in a circle in the water. And so it brings home that message of this is home. And you guys greet with aloha and, we take you seriously when you guys do that kind of stuff. It's true. It's real. Thank you.
Yeah, well, we try to be real. I think you can't show all the corners because we all have to have a little bit of privacy and secrets. But sure. I think we try to do our best just to kind of go, here it is. And maybe with a little high polish on it, but pretty much there it is.
I want to just give our listeners a little background because if you have been in a cave sequestered in the mountains for the last 50 years or so, Gabby Reece became known to the world as a volleyball player, championship volleyball player. I think you guys won the very first beach volleyball championship. And so from the inception of beach volleyball as we know it in the world, you've been there.
Yeah, so I sort of am right. You're right about that. I'm sort of the second wave. So there was a group kind of before us that really laid down the foundation that made it a professional sport. Okay. And then when I came in, actually, I was fortunate because I came from Florida State. I wasn't really a big beach player at all. I hadn't really played very much. And I moved to California and I ended up getting drafted to play 4-on-4 beach, which no longer exists. So, for example, the World Championships that you're talking about was the first ever World Championships for 4-on-4. So I did that for many years and went to the doubles tour, which is obviously still in existence, and at the Olympics. So we really were the beneficiaries of just a few 5 years before us. Yeah. Because then it was like, prize money and multiple stops and TV deals and things like that.
Well, a lot of the things that recur on our show when we talk about people who were pioneers in their industry is everybody acknowledges who came right before them. And then we'll end up talking about who showed up right after you and sort of built on what you laid down. But everybody says, because I like to say he was a pioneer or she was a pioneer, and they go, well, I came right after. So I'm not going to let you off the hook on the credit on that one. I appreciate the humility, and everybody says nice things about you all the time.
Well, no, honestly, listen, I'll be really honest about it. I was probably the one who, because of the timing, I was the one who could really hustle it first. Yeah. Straight up. So it was more that all the things came together. But as far as like players putting on events, Manhattan Beach Opens, and playing for T-shirts and, a cooler full of beer, right, there was a legit group above me that knew how to play the game. But I came in at a time where you could sort of pull it all together.
Yes.
The business of it.
And pull it all together you did for Nike and for, again, for our listeners. Beyond that, you have been a model, an actress, and I want to say a model mom, because the thing that I think really resonates with us is that you and Laird, your husband is Laird Hamilton, the big wave surfer.
He's probably the real pioneer. Let's talk about it in the house. So
yes.
Truth be told.
This is a pioneering household. And
no, it's when you play sports that are so small and nobody cares that you do a tap dance like you can't believe.
Yeah.
Right.
And as a surfer, I mean, you know what? Laird's got a brilliant story, and that deserves its own thing.
I get it. It's all about me. Forget Laird. Let's do it.
That's true. But we also want to talk about your show, The Truth Barrel, because for the listeners who haven't yet, go check out The Truth Barrel. They're on Podcast One. And you and Neil actually take your guests into that sauna over there and cook them.
Yeah, it comes out of, and you guys probably can relate to this, so many things come out of an organic way. And so we were doing pool training and combining heat and ice. So everyone will go in the barrel, 8 to 10 people in the barrel, and then you go into the ice tub 3 minutes. And the conversations in the barrel, first of all, you're in your bathing suits.
Right.
So there's an element of like, there's one layer gone.
Yeah.
And now you're sweating. So you sort of have to get to the point, right?
Yeah.
It's like, listen, I have a very big life question, but can you answer in 8 minutes, please?
Right.
And everyone chimes in. It was like, this is going on in my relationship, and this is going on with my work or with my kids. And the chiming in, and we used to joke and call it the truth barrel. And so when Podcast One approached me and they said, do you have anything you'd like to do? I had been a lot with Neil in the barrel. Like somehow our pool schedule and, certain people, you're just kind of on that rotation with them. Okay. And I feel like Neil and I we're pretty different and for a lot of obvious reasons. But then you start to realize that what we're all kind of looking for on some level, there's so many common threads.
Truth is common.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I asked Neil, I go, would you have any interest in doing this with me? And so that's how we got to the Truth Barrel. And it's fun because it's not just, our guests always say this. They go, wow, this is so different.
Yeah.
And we did one with Jordan, from The Art of Charm. And he's like, I just thought it was some gimmick and this and that. And he goes, but it's pretty cool, and you sort of get to things. And I go, exactly.
It really is a truth barrel.
Yeah.
This is one of the things too that we get with doing our show is you're looking to open the person up. I want to present the best you that I can.
Yeah, you're on my side.
Right, I'm on your side.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have a tough time letting go of their veneer and everything.
Yeah.
And I know. So I've done a lot of time in combat zones. I've got 1,000 combat missions and all that kind of stuff. And so
Pete was a spy in
you
Afghanistan.
have to yeah, exactly. And when you're with people under extremely stressful situations, there's no time for veneer.
No.
I need to know I can count on you. I need to know you, you know. And Jon, he's a private eye. He does the same thing where he gets to see the
I see
raw,
what's going
real.
on here now.
You know what? I'll tell you what's going on.
I see what's going on.
Yesterday we were driving down here. The day before yesterday, I spent half of the day in a prison cell with a murderer trying to get enough detail out of his story so that I can go get him a fair trial. And so when I find one of the things that I'm really enjoying about this visit is that I was in a prison cell with a murderer 2 days ago.
Yeah.
And today I'm working here.
Yeah, but
How's
I think
that?
how much does this lead to your perspective? I mean, you being in a lot of going on, so many missions and you dealing with very heavy situations. I think then you start to go, well, it's like me crying about whatever I was crying about earlier. It's like, is that really a big deal?
Right. And it is. It is in your context.
No, but it's
not. World. Well,
because I think the goal is as you're going through life is to get quickly to what's important. Like the faster you can do that, like, is this worth the energy to, what are we talking about? Like for you, it's like, is it life and death or just seeing maybe the best or the worst in people, kind of going, hey, what's really important in life is sort of just a few 10 things.
That is true. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Holy
This
shit.
is what the
How
Truth
did we
Barrel
come
does.
here and we got broken down?
Well, no, I just say from where the worlds that you guys live in,
Yeah.
I imagine that in some ways it makes you, I would imagine it does a couple things. One is, are people, is there good in the world? See, that's the hard thing. I think sometimes when you see really heavy things, is staying connected to the idea of all that is good.
Yeah.
Right? Because you've seen the underbelly in bigger ways than I never will. Right?
This is the thing too, and like I do think that all problems are relative to that person's capability in their life. So your problem, that's in the moment, it is a problem for you guys. You have to deal with it, and the other person's problems, you wouldn't. It's like you think, woe is me, and then you go to the hospital and you meet some kid that's got soft bone disease, and you're like, wow. You know what? I wouldn't want that problem. But that person looks at somebody else and goes, I'm great. You kidding me? You ought to see the guy down the hall, so.
Yeah. But I think it's the mastery of saying, I feel this way. Now I'm going to get on with it, though.
Right.
Especially when it isn't a problem. I think it's different with children. They talk about that with kids. Like, no, in that 5-year-old or 8-year-old's world, this is their problem.
Right.
So you can't dismiss it as, it'll be fine tomorrow. But allow them to navigate that. But then as we get older, kind of go, this feels it's got me a little bit down, but I'm only going to allow myself maybe to be here for 10 minutes or a few hours, and then I got to get on with it.
Right.
Because I think that is more the secret of, yes, we all have our problems, but then it's that decision.
There's problems, too, that demand our attention, but don't deserve it. And so you work and
those
you
are the worst.
Yeah,
those are the big distractions that
Those
you
are the
have to get
worst.
through. It's like when you stick people in the truth barrel, that's what you're cooking away. Because everybody's got their, I'm going to go in here and we're going to talk to these two and I'm going to try to hype my upcoming album or my next thing, whatever it is I'm promoting. Yeah. And I'm focused on that. Yeah. And then once I get in there, it's like, oh, man. And the questions come. And now we were talking about, we have Nico with us. He's our engineer
young
today.
Nico, of course. You always have to have the young doing all the technology, right?
Yes. That's true. The conversation, though, on our way down here, we were thinking, I wonder if people are either more curt when they get in there because they're like, I'm sweating, I got to get out of here. And it sounds like the pressure that's on somebody when they're there and the veneer that you've peeled away because, hey, I'm sitting across from Gabby and Neil and I'm sweating.
Well, and it's this too. So there's two kind of approaches. Neil, think about it as a sort of investigative reporter first, journalist, writer. And I have always come at all my interviews like, hey, tell me what you would like to share and, things that we can learn from you.
Yes.
There's enough bad news out there.
Amen.
I don't really need we've got outlets for that. That's probably not my strong suit. Mm-hmm. So Neil will hammer down like, what's your relationship like with your mother, And I'm always like, well, what I think he means. And Neil's always like, stop trying to protect them and all this stuff. So we have also that dynamic.
It's great.
But ultimately, I think the end goal for the Truth Barrel is, hey, we're just here and we want to have a conversation. We know you're a drummer. We know you're a well-known writer. And we had Terrell Owens. Do not call him Terrell, by the way. Right. The whole media, it's like Daryl. It's Terrell Owens. And when he first got here, there was some layers.
Oh, I bet.
And then
he's had a lot of protecting to have to do.
Yes. Well, think about this. And I won't go too far down the hole, but think about this. When he first had the opportunity to play and he made his first touchdown and had a really big celebratory moment, he was highly rewarded for that.
Right. Yep.
And it was organic and everything else. But then all of a sudden he started going, he started putting it together. It's a reaction. Well, if I do that and I do this, then I get that.
I get rewarded.
Correct. And he was a late bloomer in his life, in his sport and what have you, and physicality. So he started doing that, and then he was getting criticized for this very same behavior that was bringing him.
being rewarded.
Yes. And so, and we talk about sometimes, and then people go, oh, you're a bad teammate, you're this, you're that. So he's very protected. But then when he got in there and realized, like, we're not interested in that story.
Yeah.
Right.
Why don't you tell us the story that you'd like to share?
That's everybody else's sensationalism.
And
we're here in the
and we
truth
had
barrel.
Time.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the other thing.
That was
don't
a
have
two-parter.
8 minutes. Right. And we had time. And so it was really beautiful for me to see him open up. And also, I think people don't realize, and I say this a lot, when you're playing sports like football, for example, that it is, you have to really come up for it.
Yeah.
And it is dangerous, and it is a bit of a battle. It's like, how do you ask people to so politely turn on and off switches, and also to make it to the NFL? A mini miracle.
Right.
Sure.
To be playing, a miracle. To be healthy enough now to score.
Yeah.
Right.
Another
against
miracle.
11 people who
Correct.
are miracles.
Correct. So if you celebrate, why am I offended?
Right.
Yeah.
So I get it. And maybe if you don't understand how to navigate the media or whatever, which in a way is more honest.
Yeah.
Guys that know how to say all the right things and do all the right things, but maybe a guy who's just not good at it.
Hey, the media's incented to try to create stories.
The evil too. That's the bad guy. Here's the hero.
This guy tells the story. One of the things I like about Terrell Owens is when he recognized he was great, one of the elite receivers, he said, I want more money. From a league that abuses and exploits players all the time.
Right, and does everything they can to give them as little money as possible.
And when they did that, they were cutting people loose. Like, they'll take a person, like, you can still play in the league, not on my team, you're gone. Cut in a second.
Yeah.
And they have no recourse. So I don't fault the guy for going out and getting money because he's doing a sport that ruins your brain. Yeah, it's proven.
Yeah. And what's the average career? 3.2 years.
Yeah, super short.
And listen, for most of them, this is their window.
This is it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? You've got your 8 years, your 12 years, if you stay that long.
12, if you're remarkable.
To make your living for your probably
for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm. I think, and certainly the great thing about the NFL, and I always say this even about women's sports, like when the women's soccer athletes said, we would like to be paid equal because our ratings were bringing in that much money, right? Now you could say, well, it's unfair that the basketball girls get paid pretty badly, actually.
Yeah.
Right.
But if you go the business side of it is if you're not bringing in as much, then it's a hard thing to argue. But the NFL is making billions of dollars.
Yes.
On
Billions.
the backs of those players.
Billions.
And those players tend to go broke more than other major sports. And that's also shameful for the NFL. That should not be happening.
Well, I appreciate that you guys did that for Terrell Owens because Pete and I grew up in the Bay Area.
Oh, okay.
And I'm a 49er fan, and I was a fan of his. So to really humanize him, to show the part that he wants to tell, to me was terrific. His whole story, how he treasures fatherhood now.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough road, too.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to echo what you're saying, too, about the Truth Barrel. We look for the similar stories. Like, okay, great. MC Hammer went broke 25 years ago. That doesn't define who he is. You know, I want to bring out the other stories.
By the way, it doesn't define really who he was even then.
Sure.
Right.
Because the people who surrounded him will all tell you a whole different story. Like, man, that guy, I think it was Method Man.
Oh, wow.
Who recently came out and said, yeah, you know, I was a Hammer disser. And then I went to Oakland, and I found myself surrounded in a room where people were like, hey, all that Hammer business, you need to cut it out.
Yeah.
And I looked around, and I thought, ooh, I need to cut this out.
Yeah.
So, you know, everybody's got a story. Everybody who reaches the place in their career where we're all looking at them, there's a great story in there.
Yeah. Especially, you know, I think Hammer, I think it feels like some of what got him in trouble was generosity.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and the other thing is this. Let's say Method Man, who of course I like very much. You know, you have always, you know, we joke about it in surfing, the core, skateboarding, the core. But so you're always going to have a group that if you do something where more than 100 people really enjoy it and think it's fun, and maybe there's no really deep meaning to it, but it's fun, it's entertaining, people are always going to hate that.
Right.
I've learned this living with Laird. Everyone thinks, oh, I'd like to have Laird's life. And I'm like, you don't know how much work it takes to do that. So MC Hammer, even though whatever, the pants, the dance, how hard did that guy have to work?
Incredibly hard.
Yeah.
So at the end, it's in a way, for me, those are the pillars. Like if you're a hardworking person, you're doing the best you can, we can honor that.
Sure.
I don't have, whether I like your music or not, that's kind of secondary.
Sure.
Right? But I can really respect the fact that, first of all, you had an idea and you pulled it.
And it was a long pull.
That's a big
by
pull.
the time anybody gets anywhere, that was a long pull.
What is that? The 10-year overnight sensation, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I just think sometimes it's focusing on those parts. I was talking to a young man the other day about this, where we've gotten to a place now where there's zero discussion. Even if it's, you know this from if you're, in a marriage, it's like, how can two people be right and completely disagree?
Right.
And that happens all the time.
It happens in my house.
No, but it does. That day that you go, wait a minute, you mean there's not a winner and a loser? Oh gosh, what are we going to do? How do we keep score? It's like, no, how about this? We agree. We are respecting each other's opinions. We actually don't agree. There's nothing you can say to make us agree. And that's okay.
And that's all right. Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah. And also, you're still going to be here. Like, we're still going to be sitting in this same room, not agreeing for the next however many years that we still have a friendship, a life, a relationship, whatever it's going to be. So you can focus on that.
It's the one thing we disagree on,
right?
Among the 99 things we love about each other.
And somehow they're connected too.
Yeah.
And I think we're not teaching our children, and culturally there's zero conversation anymore about anything.
Yeah.
There just isn't.
This idea of life hacking and pro tips, has always been advice. There's always going to be advice, but there is no shortcut. Look, one of the things we say on the show is, a brilliant idea is not uncommon. Everybody's got an idea for a story, a book, a show, whatever. What's uncommon is the
Except
tenacity.
for Michael. Michael, your idea sucks. I just want to say that. That's from Michael.
The tenacity, the grit, the grind. Like, okay, here's your life hack. Work fucking hard.
Yeah.
And then you're not doing enough.
Yeah. That's
Lose
right.
your mind with how hard you have to work and have more to do than you have time to do and sort through that well. There's your life hack right there.
And I always say, I've tried to tell my daughter, the one that you just saw here, Reece.
Yeah.
Can you find the way to enjoy the grind a little bit?
Yeah.
She's taking on very hard school curriculum and tennis. And sometimes I didn't have a choice. I had to do it on my own.
Right.
And it's different. We've tried to create a stable environment for our family because that's what you aspire to do. Mm-hmm. But then you realize the pitfalls of that.
Sure.
And so I've said to her, listen, you're a smart kid. You're a nice person. You're a beautiful girl. You're athletic. But I can show you piles of people that have all those traits because they don't know how to work hard.
Yeah.
And so it's just one of those things where you just can't get around it. So how do you have a really good relationship with it and say, like, embrace it and say, that's why I think most athletes, they'll say you find the way to kind of, you do enjoy that grind a little bit.
There's the thing that has made you someone we all look to for advice for as many years as you've been in it, because you are not just, I mean, from having been a world-class athlete, you became a mom and a wife, and you embrace those things. And I think that the moms and wives who are out there striving and trying to stay healthy and trying to have healthy relationships and raise healthy children, they all have something that they latch onto about you.
Oh.
And I think that that's why you've been and let's face it, you also have made media appearances throughout the years that were terrific, that we all kind of liked.
Oh.
For whatever.
Well, thanks. I think I'm always hedging between who I am and then the communication of that, right? Mm-hmm. So I think I have a decent skill set and have developed it over the years of trying to communicate decently and representing myself well. So in a way, there's a theater in that.
Yeah.
Right? Because there could be people that do exactly what I do, but they don't know how to condense it and express it, or they just haven't had the path to do that, right? So, and the other side of that is, working with people that are really good at what they do because they make you look good. So
that helps.
Listen, it's the one thing I learned in modeling, which I took because it was a job.
Yeah.
Straight up. Like, I wasn't like a young girl going, I really want to
it was a few bucks that you
be a model. I was playing college volleyball. I ended up giving up my scholarship after my sophomore year and continuing to play, but paid for school myself so that I could have a job because of NCAA rules.
Right.
Because the money that you could potentially make, it's still a risk in fashion, was good enough that it was better not to have to
deal
break
with the NCAA.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so, but even then, when I became a professional, every time I took a picture, I said, well, who's shooting the picture?
Yeah.
And who's going to do the hair and makeup? Because I knew if they're not going to see you that frequently, when they do, try to
better be good.
As shiny as you can, be as succinct as you can. But then even in that whole theater part, be truthful.
Yeah.
Just be honest. You're not perfect. Don't pretend to be perfect. Because also you can't live up to that. I think that that's really where the problems begin, is I call it paint yourself in the corner.
Yeah.
So you paint yourself in the corner, and then you're in the corner and you go, I have nowhere to go. Everywhere I show up, I'm supposed to be perfect. My kids are supposed to be perfectly behaved. I'm supposed to be perfectly pretty.
Boy, and that's unfair to do to yourself.
Well, and by the way, I'm going to be 50 in like 2.5 years. It's like, you can't, what am I going to play the story of when I was 22?
Right.
It's just not going to happen. So you just kind of make some peace with that, but understand ahead, like, don't get yourself in a situation right here that you will not be able to sustain in 10 years. It just doesn't work.
You said a key word a few minutes ago. You talked about how you had developed. You've evolved into where you are now. Yeah. You're not the 20-year-old you that did what they did, And actually, we're all within 3 months of each other in age, know? And so we've all had to stop.
We noticed that because we were like, Jesus, we got to quit eating so much pizza. We're like, okay, let's look up Gabby and let's hey, Pete.
Yeah.
And Pete goes, look.
Listen, gentlemen, I birthed children too. You don't even have that excuse.
Oh, Jesus. Thanks.
Just
Thanks for rubbing that in.
Just saying.
I'm just kidding.
I'm
What I do know is I used to be a lot more fit, the truth, and I can't say I'm too old and broken to do it because there's other people.
No, but that's tough.
Yeah.
But that is part of it when you've been active.
Yeah.
But I think, listen, this is it. Laird loves this quote. It's actually from, they don't know who it was, but it was a Navy SEAL.
It was me. Oh,
yeah.
Not me.
A Navy SEAL, though, who talked about, never let your accomplishments be greater than your dreams. So how do you keep moving fluidly through your life, representing who you are and where you're at, not reminiscing? I mean, you can fondly kind of look back and go, that was nice, but not retelling that same old story, because then there's no growth.
Yeah, no, just to appreciate stuff.
So that was cool.
How do you do that? How does Gabby do that? Do you have a mantra? I know you talked about pillars earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's this. It's who am I and who do I want to continue to be and who do I want to grow into? And so you are reading and learning, and you're with people that reflect that, and you're naturally taking risks maybe that are uncomfortable and maybe a little bit out of your wheelhouse, but still an extension of really who you are. It's not like I'm departing and going and doing something so unconnected. Everything I do is still connected. And I think the other thing to remember is like identity. So I've had imagine over the years, people go, oh, weren't you that volleyball player, Gabby? And I go, well, actually, I am still Gabby. And one of the things I have done is played volleyball.
Right.
Instead of it getting all twisted, which happens very easily when you have to define things.
Yes.
Right? Like athletics, or I'm the CEO. It's like, okay. But that person is still, the value of them is still the same, whether they have that title or not. And it's them being in touch with that. And conversely, I've said this many times, and that's the same when they're telling you how great you are.
Yeah.
You can't do that either, because that's not true either.
Right. This is
Also, the volleyball playing, Gabby, at this point in your career was quite a while back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, now you're a different kind of athlete.
Yeah.
And you're an athlete that is all of the things that you're talking about, where you had children and you've gone through life stuff. And again, your audience has grown with you.
Yeah.
So one of our friends is, I won't say who, one of our friends is.
It's not Mike. Sorry, just kidding. Okay.
No, it's not Mike.
I'm
this
kidding.
time,
I'm
not
kidding.
you, Mike. One of our friends has sort of tricked a lot of the world into thinking he's a lot younger than he is. And good
Sure.
for him.
Yeah,
and we
sure.
applaud him. Right
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah.
But he knows, and we had this conversation not long ago. He was like, man, I got a couple more years before everybody figures out that I'm not 25.
Yeah. Yeah.
You haven't had to worry about that because your audience has come with you.
Yeah. Well, I think, oh gosh, women, and especially it's so tough on, I will say I never usually wave that flag, but I think women have a little bit of a different deal. Like, I'll give it to you. I'll sum it up to you in one very small story.
Nice.
I was with a group of friends here in Malibu, a very good friend of mine. They were showing a film at their house, and it's serious movie people, serious producers, serious directors, heads of studios, serious people. They're in the business. They've been in the business. They know the business. They do it, right? So we watched this movie, and out comes this actress on the screen who had a little bit of work done. And you hear, oh, what'd she do to her face and this and that, right?
Yeah.
20 minutes goes by. Another actress who's been in the business a long time comes out on the screen, hasn't had anything done. She's looking probably her age.
Right.
Oh, God, she's looking so old. And this and that. I go, hey, you
Jesus.
can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
Like, which one is it? And so I think for women, we do have to be careful because it's a slippery slope,
Yeah.
right? Like, oh, I'm this age, I'm that age. And it becomes so much about our identity. And imagine, even for me, it's like so much of what I've done is about my physicality that I'm like, okay, how do I not live and die by that? How do I, kind of do that gracefully? And it's to your point, and having daughters really helped me. There's sort of a time that you go down the center lane, you're 15, you're 18, you're 25. And then once you start having a family, you still have your lane.
Yeah.
But like, for example, when I walk down the street with Reece, if it's a 22-year-old guy, he's not looking at me.
Yeah.
He's looking at her.
Right.
Because it's her time to
It's
go
her
down
time.
the center lane.
Right.
And my time is to go in my own lane. And by the way, my lane is much wider and longer than it was
It's a great lane.
when I was 25, but it's like, this is my lane. This is where I live. This is who I am. I'm going to own it. I'm going to not apologize for it. I'm going to seem to enjoy it because also, by the way, that's pretty sexy.
Yeah.
When you meet people 30, 40, 50, 80, 90, and you go, wow, they kind of like life, you're drawn to that. You don't go, oh, she has some fine lines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have a husband, so I have a mate that I can fool around with. I'm not looking to hook up with anyone.
Right.
So that's probably
You don't have to
pretty
worry
nice.
about that.
But that's nice.
Yeah.
No, because that's the other side. I was talking about that with the girls because I've had some friends that have separated and they're close to my age. And I was like, oh man.
And they're on the prowl.
Yeah, the thought of dating, and they're beautiful women. And and we were talking about that, and I go, that'd be tough. So I know it's also different when you're at a different chapter.
Sure.
So I'm not discounting that, but I still think, like I have friends, I look at them, I go, you're beautiful women. And if you feel that way, that's what the vibration is. And
Yes.
that they say men only see what you project. And is the guy would you want to be at 50 dating a 30-year-old guy? Could be.
Could be.
But maybe
Yeah.
if it was someone who was in a similar time in life, and I'm not saying they're not special situations, then, by the way, he's not 25 either.
Yeah.
So why is the
Right.
expectation for us to be 25?
Yeah, you're talking about a lot of really important things. Perspective being one, and we get to have the lens of perspective because we are the age that we are.
Yeah.
We can say, this matters.
I remember when that mattered.
Right, exactly. But this
know.
doesn't matter to me anymore. So if the actress does decide to get something done, partly because she's in a business where
Brutal.
it's like it's okay to do that.
Yeah.
I know for a fact that there's all kinds of men that are celebrities or important people that have had work done.
Yeah.
And the criticism isn't there like it is for other people.
Yeah.
Here,
Well-
I want to talk to the ladies for a minute.
Uh-oh.
Ladies,
Hello, ladies.
Should we put on some Barry White? with that
I
tone,
want
or
to
what?
be- I just
Yes.
want to say
Answer
that
that question. It's always
No.
yes.
Gabby Reece just said, "Wow, dating would be tough." And if you're out there, ladies, and you're separating and you're at a point in your life where you think dating's going to be tough, it's because it's tough to get to know somebody again. It's tough for all of the reasons except for, man, I got a couple of lines in my face and I don't.
Yeah.
I'm
That's not
as
the
young
tough
as I-
part.
That's not the tough part
I
at all.
think actually the toughest part, especially if you've been in a relationship, is to care enough to actually go through the process of dating.
Right.
I think it would be like, yo, do I really need to do that?
Because you
know?
get to a shorthand
There
with
is a
your mate
shorthand.
you've been with for 20 years where that's where you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, do I have to go through this again? You know?
Well, and that see, it's also, but, and again, some people don't love it if I allude to this, but I do think there's sort of a natural process. I joke with Laird occasionally, like we'll say something and I go, well, technically I really got from you what I needed. They're walking around.
Right. Yes.
Like I'm good. Like I got what I needed
Playing with house money
because
now.
my genetic drive was
Yeah.
like, he's the guy.
Yeah.
And there they are. They
Ta-da.
have names. They walk around.
Hey, it worked.
They talk back. I mean, they're here. And he's like, oh, was that what I was, like a piece of meat? And I was like, well, no, but kind of.
Yeah.
So that I think also it happens if you're like at close to 50, you're not like, hey, I need babies.
Right.
So you're looking for something else.
Uh-huh.
You're looking for companionship and friendship. And by the way, I actually think sometimes the guy that you choose to procreate would not always be the guy that you would choose to be your companion
Late in life.
Correct.
Yeah.
And plus you're like, hey, I'm not doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You learn, it's just a different thing.
I have a friend who is
Is it Mike?
not.
No, I'm just kidding.
Not like this time.
Everybody's
Mike got entirely too much attention
Sorry.
this episode. She is divorced and raising her children wonderfully, but her ex-husband looks a lot like The Rock, and he's a physician and a successful guy, ultra smart, really physically. I mean, he's
commanding.
all of that great breeding stock.
Sure.
But that was that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, so I'm sorry that they went through a divorce, but I think that that's exactly the picture. I mean, she saw, and probably he did too, saw a great mate with whom to procreate and propagate the earth and have great children.
And that's successful, by the
And
way.
the kids are great.
Yeah, and that could be considered a success.
Sure.
And the other thing is, and I don't mean to offend you gentlemen.
I'm
but
already offended.
I will say directly that I think sometimes, take a guy like that, for example, maybe he has a lot going on and maybe there's parts where they need sort of that, you're really great, you're so special, because everywhere they go in his work and everything, he's getting that.
Sure.
So it's hard to go home and have your woman tell you, did you take the garbage out? And Susie needs to get picked up from tennis at 5:00. I think
Wait a
sometimes-
minute, I don't pick people up from tennis. I'm special.
Yeah. So I think at times that can happen where maybe as a wife, that's part of it. You're younger, you do it. And then after a while, you're just like, no, I need some help.
Yeah.
And I do think you're special, but I like, we're in a real
Take this garbage out.
We're in a real relationship.
Right.
And
Yeah.
a real relationship has both. And actually I should be the person. It's like with Laird. I mean, Laird is celebrated in a lot of places that he goes, but I would hope that he knows when I look at him and say, hey, I really appreciate you. And
That's
I
a whole
really
different celebration.
think, yeah, you are special. It's like, no, I'm talking about you.
You.
And I'm not talking about like, oh, you're a fancy doctor and you got big biceps, or you ride giant waves, or you got a big bank account.
Right.
I'm talking about you.
Yeah.
And sometimes maybe for certain people, and I won't generalize it to men, that's actually not what they want. They're like, oh, you're so smart, you're so strong, you're so great. But like to get down into it,
Right.
it's a different deal. But then women also, or the other partner, I'm not going to say women, we need to remember to say that to our partners.
You're talking about a very important thing that me and my girlfriend do is we have a thing, we go on a walk just about every day, and there's a turnaround point. And at that turnaround point, everything slows down. The world slows down.
Pete's playing up big time too. Have I said that on the show yet? I'm sorry. Yeah.
And we slow down and we have a kiss just right there on this little trail.
Well, you've
And
been
so-
dating like 2 weeks? What's up?
No, not terribly long.
I'm just kidding.
But long. But this goes to the thing that you're saying is just slow down.
Every
and
day is
appreciate.
borrowed time. No.
That's
Well, that is true.
But you have to slow down. And sometimes because we're talking about things, life, and all those things, and maybe half of the time, one of us will forget at the turnaround point to do that. And it's like, no, hang on, slow down, have this kiss, enjoy the moment.
Yeah.
And because all those problems and all the dreams and all the whatever are on the road that we're going to talk about, they're going to be there in 30 seconds right now. And do you and Laird have things like that where you just slow the world down and enjoy each other's presence for a second?
Look at this house.
Laird,
this house is a great place to slow down.
It is good. Laird, you might meet him before you guys leave. He's a very intense person, which I really like. But he's not really that vulnerable to white noise as much as I am. So he's the one that kind of anchors us and says, like this, I always use this analogy. I'm at the sink. Dinner's done. We're doing dishes. Whatever.
Wait, you do your own dishes?
Of course. How do your kids gonna learn, right?
Right. Yeah.
And he's like, "Did you see the stars? You girls have to walk outside and see the stars." And literally makes everybody walk outside and go look at the stars. So I think it's about that. But I have learned that it's really important to just let your partner know, and on a pretty regular basis, that you care for them, you love them. And in the midst of talking about, water heater things leaking like we have right now into the gym kitchen, pretty girl problems. This is all going to pass. And I just want, I care because there's so much of that when you're tending to a relationship, so much about the management of the house and the family that it's not sexy.
Right.
That is not sexy. It's not,
I want to also, for our listeners who, first of all, have not looked up Laird and don't know him, he routinely rides down the face of a wave that's the size of an airport parking garage. So to say that guy's intense, that guy's probably pretty intense. But you guys also have a life that a lot of people would say is a wonderful life. You split time between Malibu and Hawaii.
Yeah.
Wonderful life.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
Yeah.
But when you split time between Malibu and Hawaii, you got a lot to manage.
Yeah.
And you want to talk about that stuff getting unsexy real fast.
Yeah.
How about a leak that's happening into your gym and that, okay, pretty girl problems.
Yeah,
but
it
what
is.
if it's a pretty girl problem, but you're 5-hour plane ride away from that problem that's leaking into your gym right now? What do you do? And then all of a sudden it's like, well, that great life
But
suddenly
then you
needs
choose,
a lot of
but
maintenance.
you've chosen that, right? Like that's the other thing is like it's also knowing who you are and what you can manage. So I have friends where they need to simplify it just a little bit more because that feels good to them. And for me, I enjoy the idea that we get to split our time between the two places and have made the understanding that now you're adding a layer of detail and just say thanks.
Yeah.
And just say thanks that you actually can make that decision. I mean, that choice that you can do it. But I think that's really important. Like people will be spinning and you go, well, wait a second. If you feel like you're always spinning, why? And are there any elements that maybe you could get rid of?
Right.
Or if you kind of like the spinning and you can manage it and still keep your line through the middle while it's all happening around you, then it's okay.
Yeah, in the Army, there's a lot of people that take on. I wear too many hats. They keep. Well, take those hats off.
Yeah.
Put the hats on that you can do well, and just do those things. But they don't want that. What they want is the hats.
Yeah.
They are a hat rack.
They like it.
Yeah, they want that. Yeah.
Well, and also, to remember all of us are replaceable. And that is a very liberating thought where you go, I could delegate. By the way, when I'm not here, someone else will do it. So I'm not going to put that kind of self-importance on myself.
Sure.
I'll be my kid's only mom, but otherwise we're all replaceable at pretty much anything.
That's the, I think, opposite of what Pete's talking about. That's what when you're trying to put on all those hats, you're trying to combat exactly that.
That's what I mean. It prompts me to remind people, like, I don't care how many hats you can put on.
Right. Guess what?
We're all replaceable.
Yeah, we can divide those hats up.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So I was decent at volleyball, and I'm saying that with all respect that nowhere near that. And I played a little bit of beach and a little bit of stuff on hard court. I cannot play pickup. Even if I physically could, I can't anymore. But if someone said, "Hey, let's play volleyball in the park," I can't do it. It drives me crazy. Can you go to
Didn't we try to do that recently?
Yeah.
It was terrible.
It was terrible.
Pick up?
Yeah. Can you stand? Can you bear the game of just knock the ball over the net, or you're like, I just can't do it.
And I don't say this with any snottiness. I just no.
Yeah, it's not snotty. It's just practical. You've played the game where you're like.
I mean, if it was like a bunch of kids, it's cool. It's fun.
Oh, yeah, sure.
You know what I mean? But if it was like some people are like, hey, jump in and play. I'm like, this is a different version of playing and I like it. But it's just different.
Yeah, it's hard to enjoy.
And different is the succinct way of saying absolutely not in the same universe.
Right.
That time was it, I think it was a graduation party or something, and we played the parents versus the kids.
And what happened?
And so we've always played parents versus kids stuff.
And what happened? The
Nico's
kids got
my
big?
kid.
Oh, come on. Handsome bugger.
Well,
And what, the kids got big and
the kids
hammered the
got big.
parents?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
That's what ended up
They're
happening.
like, come
was
on,
like,
old man.
they used to be kids. Now they're all varsity athletes.
Yeah, I know. And they jump like 30 inches with nothing, no problem.
Yeah.
And they're
Right.
like moving. Yeah, of course.
And it seemed like not only did they score more points, but every point was a back injury.
Oh, yeah.
Or like, oh, my hip. Like, really? My hip?
A
Somebody
whole bunch
just
of running
explained?
and sand flying and diving, and the ball just going boop right
Oh,
next to you.
I think I've been part of that sometimes.
So different.
Yeah, of course.
Different.
You're known now for the crazy workouts and weights in the pool and stuff like that. That's bananas. We love it.
Well, it's, I have to say that one of the other benefits that I get from living with Laird is he's a very creative type, and he kind of approaches training differently. Like, well, what would make sense, and how can I continue to improve my performance but not beat myself up? So, you have to realize, even though I'm done competing, Laird is still very much on his quest for waves. So he still has a tangible goal, which is be ready at any time for something that you don't know exactly when it's going to be coming, and at that moment be completely physically ready and ready to risk your life. So he has to be dialed in. So I'm a little bit of a crash test dummy along with a couple of our other friends. So the pool training started about 10, 12 years ago.
Wow.
And he just sort of thought, well, we're not going to be in gravity, so we can jump with heavy weights. We can be ballistic. I mean, these are not new ideas.
Yeah.
These are just ways of like, let's really put it into a program. Let's really organize it. Let's have reps. Let's have names for exercises. Let's have sequences. Let's do this. And so what we found was, I think both of us separately from our respective sports, is we both like the training because you like the way it makes you feel.
Yeah.
And so it was just a natural extension of what we were already doing. So it's pool training. I was fortunate enough to get involved with a curriculum I created completely by accident. I was teaching in Kauai, and they had shut the gym down, and I invited like 8 friends and said, okay, I'll bring all the equipment in my truck, balls and dumbbells and kettlebells and things. And then I'd be at the market, and someone would be like, oh, I'm so-and-so's auntie, and I would like to come to your workout. And
you don't say no.
You don't say no.
Yeah.
And so it turned into about 80 people. And so I had to figure out how to accommodate. I charged everybody $1 because just so they were on a contract with me for my insurance. And so what that did was it created an allowance for me to really do it how I wanted to do it, because nobody had say.
Right.
Because it's $1. And we did it in a warehouse. I used to say to them, this is not a democracy, it's a dictatorship.
That's right. And you signed up for it.
Yeah, that's right. So, but what was genius is it was the best classroom. So after about 3 or 4 years, I was like, this is completely scalable. People are on teams.
Sure.
So one of the number one things, if we're talking about, like, let's say we're talking about health and fitness, you have to have someone you do it with. There's a very small percentage that can do it alone. They can. They're very type A. They like their alone time. They go at 5 a.m, those kinds of things. They exist. But for most of us, we need someone to show up for.
Do you say most of us because you?
Me too.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, 50% of the time.
How about Laird?
Laird's
He's kind of a freakazoid, huh?
Well, it's not that. It's just Laird's a little different in that I always say I have a choice. Laird just doesn't have a choice.
He doesn't have a choice.
It's in him.
Yeah.
And even his surfing, it's like he could say, well, I could retire. It's not about that.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a choice. This is an extension of truly who he is and what makes him happy.
Right.
And same with the movement. I don't think he wants to be in a scheduled situation ever, but the idea of moving and pushing yourself and being in uncomfortable situations, I think he has a great relationship with that.
Yeah.
So
that is unique.
Yeah. Well, I feel that way too. I don't like to be in quite as uncomfortable a situation as he does.
Yeah.
But I think what I feel after doing that, and I think if you talk to a lot of people, military or athletes, is I got to be with myself that day. Like there was no fluff, there was no role. There was like, this is hard. How are you going to deal with it? How are you going to react? Are you going to suck it up? Are you going to stretch? Are you going to, do it when you don't think you can? Are you going to do it when you don't want to? And for me, there's something very powerful in that.
Yeah.
For living.
In the response to that, yeah.
I think so. Because I think it has a really grounding element to it where you go like, there I am, there I am, there I am. And because, I even joke about taking pictures. It's like, okay, someone comes, they paint your face, they do your hair, they give you a dress, and it's like the best version of you, and then even better after they retouch it, right? Yeah. Where this is like, no, there you are. Mm-hmm. How are you going to react to that? Right. You're really uncomfortable. You're going to freak out, or are you going to be cool? Because that's when it matters.
Right.
Like, who cares? Like, Laird's always like, it's nice to be nice when everything's nice. Are you nice when it's not nice?
Right.
And so, and you know this from,
sure.
It's like who you want to be in a foxhole with. It's like, not that guy.
Yeah.
A little bit of pressure.
Not Eddie Haskell.
Yeah, he starts freaking out. And then there's some person that you might not even like as much, but you're like, doesn't matter, because when it comes down to it, they are right there.
Yeah.
And so we have the pool training, which is part of XPT. Mm-hmm. And then the class I created was called High X, and it had some built-in mechanisms to help people be successful. So in my class, for example, they're in teams of like 6 to 8. But in real life, you could just do you and a teammate. And the other great thing about it is you do kind of everything quickly. So you're in each station for 3 minutes. You switch every 30 seconds in those stations. So for example, if I give you something ballistic, like a high knee run, then I go, okay, 30, you're going to get to recover for 30. I'll give you something else, like step back lunges. So you're fatigued. Now you're going to deal with your balance, but you get to catch your breath, right? Then we move you back to something ballistic at 3 minutes. I tell you, okay, transition, you move on, you follow the team in front of you. Mm-hmm. Couple cool things about that is you could train with somebody either way more fit than you or more deconditioned, and you don't affect each other. The other thing is, once you've accomplished one station, it's done. You never have to see it again. So if you're doing an exercise, you're like, I hate this exercise. This is it.
Yeah.
I'm done. I don't have to come back around.
Right.
And so then you have that. You have quick transitions.
Everything's finite. It's like, I'm going to endure this for a little bit and then get to the next one.
Because you can, and that's so, by doing it, I really kind of thought, well, these are better responses I can see from people. Another cool thing, men and women could train together.
Yeah.
Because women like to train with men, but how do you kind of protect men in that environment? So your team would reflect really who you are. Uh-huh. So I could have young 20-something-year-old guys, a bunch of big beefcake, strong, and right behind them could be a bunch of middle-aged women following them as a team.
Yeah.
Where they was is where you go. So we've got that element. And really, I actually think for people at home, one of the most important things that we've kind of stumbled upon is the breathing. It sounds so simple,
and so neglected.
It is, because most of us don't breathe correctly. So the download on that is this, especially for if people have young children, we should be breathing in and out of our nose only. Maybe if you're running a sprint at the end, but the deal is when you breathe with your mouth shut, you have CO2 that rises. That's what deep divers try to scrub. And it overrides the impulse to breathe, right? When they scrub the CO2, so they mouth breathe and get rid of the CO2. Mm-hmm. Okay, but in the bloodstream, when you're breathing, the oxygen cannot be released into the cells without the presence of CO2.
Wow.
So we say it's like overeating, malnourished. When we're not eating the right things, we're over-breathing and we're under-oxygenated. And so your whole body's processes and your recovery, everything has to do with oxygen.
I'm going to try to unblow my mind, put it all back together. And
Okay.
while I do that, I'm going to ask you, what does that have to do with young children?
Okay, so when we have young children, if we can teach them to think about when a child nurses, they're only nose breathing.
Uh-huh.
So it's not only they're getting the nutrition, but they're developing their jaw and throat muscles correctly. Mm-hmm. So what happens is if you have children and you can get them breathing correctly, and they're also nose breathing when they're sleeping.
They're oxygenating properly.
Not only exactly, and your sinuses emit nitric oxide, which helps your body absorb the oxygen better, and also you can minimize the amount of inflammation in your sinuses and your lungs, which it's connected. If you, like people say, well, I feel stuffy. You do, but you'll get past it if you can commit to it. And then if you really got crazy with it, you could drive in your car, and on the exhale through the nose, you could hum. Mm-hmm. There's a reason monks hum, because the vibration is very helpful for the whole process. So you'd have mood elevation. It helps with weight. Because the thing is, if our body is not working correctly, we're always kind of working behind. The nose either heats or cools the air depending on where you live. It also acts as a filter. You capture 42% more moisture in your sinuses, which also helps with that inflammation response. So this is something you can do anywhere.
I'm just.
So for
have
me,
you heard any of this?
Well, there's a book. It's called The Oxygen Advantage.
Okay.
People can get it. Patrick McCune is the author. And so for me, I'm very interested in like, yes, I want to be strong. Yes, I want to be lean. I would even like to look good. But if you say to me, where am I at really about my fitness? It's how can I live in a healthful way so I can be a more productive human, a better person, a better mother, wife. So yes, the other things will follow. If I eat well and move up, I'm going to say that it'll probably work out on the aesthetic side.
Yeah.
But most importantly is, are we sleeping enough? Because none of us are.
Right.
Are we hydrated? We're not. But if you can also breathe correctly, you will hydrate your cells better. So there's things we can do, and also the acidity of our systems.
Yeah.
If we're breathing and oxygenating our systems, we can lower all of that. And there's a lot of benefits. So when you say to me, okay, I want to talk about weight and this and that, what I'd say to people is find something you really like to do that you can bear.
Yeah.
Because if you I hate the gym, don't work out
go
in
to
the
the
gym.
Yeah.
Find somebody, even if it's not your friend that you're going to hang out with and tell your deep, dark secrets, but it is like your workout buddy.
Yeah.
Because there's those people, they've got that energy and you go, I don't know that I'd be like really close with them.
Yeah.
But in this sphere of my life, they're great. Because on the day you won't show up, you're accountable. Schedule it, write it down.
Wow.
Like everything else. And then the food is the king.
Yeah.
The food is everything. What we put in our mouth.
Jay always says you can't outrun a bad diet.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't, but it's completely doable. It's just keep it, you want to talk about keep it simple?
Yeah.
Keep the food simple. And with kids, like if you say, hey, with your kids, are you really restrictive? I'm not, because I don't want them to have issues later.
Yeah.
So if I go, you can't eat this and you can't eat that, they go to their friend's house and they just want to have chips and ice cream.
Right.
So it's about informing them what's food and what's fun.
Yeah.
And I always say, eat your calories, don't drink your calories. Because the sugar, those drinks, the juices, even healthful drinks, they'll get you.
They'll get you. Yeah.
They get you.
You don't think about them. And you don't think about the caloric intake
No.
in some unicorn drink or whatever.
And it's an accumulation.
Yeah.
And it's tough on you because if you have a lot of sugar is... I'm going to actually be interviewing this guy soon. And I think if anybody wants to ever see the lecture, there's a condensed one. There's one that's an hour and a half, but there's one that's 32 minutes. It's a gentleman named Dr. Lustig, Lustig. He's actually up from your way. And he's a doctor. And he talks, it's called The Bitter Truth. So if people really want to understand from a scientific place what sugar does to your system,
Right.
just listen to it. You know, I'm not that smart. So I have to look and access other people and learn. And there's a lot of great information.
I think that's what makes you that smart. I mean, we've all kind of gotten by on not being we didn't all make it up. We seek it out.
Yeah.
And the ability to seek it out and go, okay, well, I'm going to try and filter this for what really counts. That's what makes us smart. We're in the home stretch, and I want to make sure that I ask you this very calculated question in the home stretch, which is, we've enjoyed having you in our lives and for our health and all of that stuff for the last 30 years. What is Gabby Reece 30 years from now? What does she care about? What should we expect from our lives 30 years from now that you think is going to matter? Well,
I think, listen, at the baseline of everything is about connection. I think it's about relationships first. And you can check on people who live a very long life when they feel satisfied and such. They usually have very good connections. Yeah. So I think that's the number one for me. But I sort of think I'm not going to fight where I am. So in 30 years, I'll be, but I think it's about not letting it be defined by other people. So hopefully I will not be a person who will say, well, I can't do that because I'm this age, or I shouldn't do that. I hope I can continue to have the confidence to go, this is what feels good to me, and I'm going to do that regardless of everyone around me sort of has, bought into, well, I can't do that, or I'm too old, or something like that. And I think also people can continue to sort of, I don't want to say dream, but like the notion of retirement for me seems just brutal. You know what I mean? Like,
no,
even
you don't seem like they're retiring.
Even if they retire, let's say they have a 9-to-5 job, then go out and do something that you've always wanted to, or I don't care, learn a new language. Who cares? Something. Do something. So for me, I just hope to continue to try to be my best self, because I sort of feel like the pursuit of excellence is good, not the pursuit of perfection, because it's impossible.
Yeah, that's silly.
Yeah.
I'm asking for our listeners, because if I'm listening to this show, I want to think, well, what should I try to do as my life advances and I sort of, reach the autumn?
I think it's the understanding first of who you are. And then you sort of go, okay, well, I'm going to live each day the best that I can as myself, not what other people think I should do or tell me what I'm supposed to enjoy. But really genuinely getting in touch with that resonates, that feels good intrinsically. I want to do that versus, well, this is what I should be doing, and listen, taking care of yourself is one of the biggest. It's just one of the most important investments. Paul Chek, this great trainer, said he would look out his window and he'd say, guys were driving Mercedes going through the drive-thru. He said, you know what? Drive a Jetta and eat better healthy food. Like, what's the priority? What are the priorities?
Sure. Yeah.
Our nails are perfectly done, our houses are perfectly clean, but then we'll eat whatever. So I just want to encourage people to, you know what I mean? Like, take care, love yourself.
Right.
And I don't mean like love yourself. I mean like love yourself, like take care. And one thing I have learned from Laird that I suffer from doing is try to have some fun.
Yeah, that's a big thing, because you can be the perfectionist person. We had a guest on one of my other shows where she talked about, she was a national class gymnast.
Sure. Oh, they're very intense.
Right. And so I asked, because I know several Olympians that have won gold medals, that kind of thing. And there's the kind that seeks to perfect their specific routine, right? And there's the other one that's like, you do that, I'm going to go for amplitude. I'm going to try the harder trick. Like they do 4.5s now in diving. They didn't used to do that because it wasn't aesthetically pleasing. But now they can do. So what kind of person are you? Are you the person that's going to hone and hone and hone and hone so much that you never sit back and go, damn, this knife is sharp, Yeah. Or are you going to be an amplitude person who risks perfect 10s to have the enjoyment? And you got to balance that in what you are, whatever your example is. Yeah. Because if you can't enjoy what you're doing, if you can't slow down on that trail and get that kiss or whatever it is, then that's where your work is.
Well, and life is about risk also.
Right.
Like you must risk. You can't just stay on and on. Like take a risk, even if it's like, let's say someone is single and you've been going somewhere and you see this person that you kind of, what's wrong with going to say hello? Yeah.
What's wrong with being curious?
Just take a risk.
Right.
And I don't mean like diving out of the plane without the pack on. I mean like smart risks. 'Cause then that's when everything happens.
Yes.
So you guys are going to go home and take care of yourselves?
Yeah. And not only that, but I mean, I think there was a whole lot of profundity in that. I mean, just the risks and the, ability to see life for the beautiful things and go, there are some things that are whatever.
Well, and define success. That's what I've had to learn as a parent. Mm-hmm. My success comes initially probably out of fear.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people. And then you sort of say, well, I'll stop paying rent on that apartment I don't live in anymore. So, because I can move on and get a new set of motivations.
Yeah.
But with my children, you go, oh, they're going to grow up and they're going to do this, this, and this. And then you go, wait a second, I'm going to have to look at this and redefine what I say is successful. So it's successful having a pile of money, or you're well-known, or you're really accomplished, or is first success, you know how to care for yourself, you have good communication skills, you know how to work hard, you're a good person. And out of that, if your life reflects you, for me, I would be much more interested in that as success than get a big house, get a big car, get some cheese. Maybe people think you're cool, because if you're not happy, or versions of happy, because being happy all the time is impossible. But just, at least having peace, happiness, joy kind of floating in and out on a regular basis. It's like, what are we going for? Yeah. I don't know.
One of the things I've learned by being a parent, and as good of a parent as I can be, I've been gone a lot, but I can't just break out the hammer to solve every problem. I can't just yell. I can't just get mad. And then a lot of times the thing I'm mad about are the things that I do. And I've parented myself by going, wait a second.
Yeah.
I need to chill out. Because one, at this age, I was doing way worse, Two, like, they get to make mistakes and they're learning from them. And so now what's my response going to be? Like, I can't be angry at her being like me, because she is like me.
I do that with him all the time. I'm like, hey,
Yeah. But, that's fear, too, because we love them so much and we want everything to work out for them. And so when we react so strongly, most of it, I think, comes from fear that, like, are they going to be okay?
Yeah.
And it turns to an anger or strong reaction because they mean so much.
Right.
I mean, what is more important? Nothing.
And you can be a great guide as a parent, but you can't teach them all the lessons. Some of the lessons
I
are
know.
theirs.
No, you got to. How many lessons
That's
did you have to learn
brutal.
all by
I know,
yourself?
why is
And
that?
so when we think about that, we're like, well, I just needed to go learn that one on my own.
But
Well,
not
guess
for
what?
my but not for my
But
babies.
not for my babies, right?
No, but it's true. It's such a humbling thing.
Yeah. And that is such a mom response because I know that my wife does that a lot more than I do. She'll go, oh, no. And I'll be like, whatever.
I
He's
know,
going to
but
get a
that's
scab. He's going to get
Yin and yang for everything in life. Right?
Sure.
Yeah.
It's great.
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you what, I have enjoyed the hell out of this conversation, and you really deliver. So for our listeners, don't forget, go check out The Truth Barrel on Podcast One.
Thank you.
And listen to everything that Gabby does because she's only looking out for the next 30 years of your life.
Well, okay, I can ask you guys 2 questions.
Sure.
Please.
Okay, one is, ending on that note, what I want to remind people, though, is what works for me doesn't always work for everybody. And so I always say, hey, listen, it's a conversation. Take what feels good to you. But it's so important for people to do what's their story. It's
Yeah.
their story. And then secondly, how did you guys get together and do this show?
Well, Pete came home from Iraq or Afghanistan or somewhere at some point and went to school with my wife.
Okay.
So
You trying to hit on your wife? No, I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding. Inappropriate. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, it's funny. We're all right.
No, that
we
I think
have
your
a lot
son
of
just threw up
jokes.
in his mouth. No, just kidding.
if
He's
you
like, "My mother."
had any idea what he's heard over the last 48 hours.
Oh, Jesus.
And all his life, really.
And they became friends at school?
Well, we were cohorts. We were in the same class and
Okay.
everything. So we've always known each other. We weren't necessarily close.
and
but
it's a small town, so everybody knows everybody.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you don't have to be close to be close.
Yeah, I gotcha.
We're the same people.
And
Yeah.
my wife and I, and Nico, were living downtown in this small town.
Okay.
And the party invitation came out. Hey, Pete's back. Everybody, we're getting together. I don't know who the hell Pete is, but whatever. The place is around the corner from our house. I guess we're going there for
Sure.
for dinner tonight to celebrate whoever in the hell Pete is. So we get there, and it turns out that everybody else was having their own reunion, and that Pete and I were sitting next to each other and had probably more in common than a lot of the other people in the room who were
Yeah.
having their reunions with
Yeah.
everybody they had in common.
Yeah.
And at the time, a friend of mine who was guest number 1 on our podcast,
Yeah.
Was it Mike? No, I'm just kidding.
No.
Sorry.
It was James. James Early, who actually produced all of the MC Hammer records we
Oh,
love.
great.
He, at the time, I had a martial arts school, and he was a student of mine.
But you just had this thought, like, I want to do a podcast and talk to people?
No, James said, I want to have you on this radio show that I do.
Because you have a nice voice, by the way.
Thank you very much.
You do. Your dad has a nice voice.
And I said, yeah, I'll do it. So I got there, and it turns out it was his mom's radio show. This is James. We love James. His mom has a radio show where she talks about community stuff, and James produces the show just because he likes hanging out with his mom every Sunday night.
That's so good.
So it is. It's great. So we had a great show that we did. His mom and I were...
We talked about traffic and stuff?
We talked about schools, and we
Yeah.
talked about community things that were going on. I don't remember what, but she and I have developed a relationship now, so we talk about all kinds of stuff. And the phones lit up. So the guy who owned the radio station was like, "That was great. Will you come do this other show?" And I was like, I guess. And that turned very quickly into, we have a slot open on Wednesday nights, and I really want you to take it because you guys make the phones. And I said, I have a kid who's a little shy, and I think I'd like to stick a microphone in front of him. If you don't mind me bringing my kid, I'll do the show. So he said, all right, Wednesday night, 6 to 9, that's you. So I started taking that slot. Pete was recently back. So I said, hey, Pete, come be a guest on my show.
Yeah, because I bet you have a lot of interesting stories.
I do.
I know.
1,000 patrols, 1,000 stories. Yeah, it's crazy.
So he came on the show, and we lit the phones
You
up.
killed it.
And I said, man, you know what? That was great. If you want to come back anytime. And he said, well, I don't have shit to do. I'll be back next Wednesday.
Yeah.
And then a few months of doing that show, James finally came in and said, you guys are done here. You got to do something else.
That's great. That's a great friend.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so we said, well, okay, how about if we did a podcast? Would you be guest number one? And he said, sure. And that was that.
But you went for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the thing.
Yeah, we had a natural chemistry, and then we had a practical, like we worked hard
Yes.
to develop our back and forth. You know, you guys must do this on your show where there's times when you have questions that you want. You have to surrender those questions because the greater conversation is there. So we've worked to develop that. And early on, we had constant feedback of don't stop doing this. Keep going.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's sort of that story.
And
you
then
know, right there.
along the way, the little steps like, holy shit, we find ourselves in Gabby Reece's house.
You know.
And those things are just like we're capturing all these fascinating stories, and they've really affected our lives.
Yeah.
So,
But that's why I do the podcast, because I want to learn.
yeah.
But I find myself being renewed and inspired
Boy.
by
Yeah.
the people. And that's the spaces I want to live in.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's enriching, and we feel like we're enriching other lives. And there's sometimes we do shows, not because it's someone who's known, but it's like, no, this person needs to have some voice, and we give it to them freely because we are so fortunate to have the experiences that we have. I mean, like this, it's a fantastic show. So we're super, super fortunate to have this opportunity.
Super fortunate.
Well, thanks for coming to hang out with me.
Gabby Reece on all social media. Everybody look her up, like her stuff, subscribe to everything, especially the Truth Barrel, which is awesome.
Totally.
And yeah,
Thank you.
thank you,
Thank
Gabby
you,
Reece.
gentlemen.